And we are live. This is the Canada Hoops Daily Podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and I do wish Raptors fans to say that I wish we were doing this live stream under different circumstances, but that is not the case. Masai Ujiri is out as president of the Toronto Raptors. There was always talk of this happening. There's rumblings. We knew the contract scenarios, but the time is here, folks, where we need to break down and discuss Masai Ujiri's run has come to an end in the city of Toronto. And this is a tough one. I can't lie. I mean, as someone who, we're doing a Raptors pod right now. But here's the thing. Let's just break down the news. Shams comes out and drops the bomb this morning of all bombs because literally it's a day after the draft. The Raptors are feeling good. We're seeing videos of Masai calling the draft pick and, none was the wiser. Nobody knew anything was up. There's no rumblings as of this time right now. We knew of the contract scenario and what could happen as Masai was reportedly entering the final year of his contract. But at the end of the day, everyone is surprised today that this happens. So let's break this down from the beginning, okay? Shams comes up this morning at 9:08 a.m. Shams Charania got the picture. He got the graphics guys up and working too. And it says, breaking, Masai Ujiri out as vice chairman and president of the Toronto Raptors, sources tell ESPN. He follows that up with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment and Masai Ujiri have decided to part ways as Ujiri was entering the final year of his contract, sources tell ESPN. That tweet hit, and 8 minutes later, my phone was already blinging with people just like, holy bleep, what's going on? Where did this come from? How's this happen right now? So many questions, so much to break down. But I do think the place that we have to start, and if we don't start here, we're doing this all a disservice, is we got to salute Masai the God Ujiri. Because the reality is the Toronto Raptors are not the Toronto Raptors without Masai Ujiri. And it's kind of odd too, because last season we did the celebration of the 30th year anniversary and you went through everything and you got to see all the big faces that have meant so much to the organization, whether it was Vince Carter, whether it was Damon Stoudemire, like so many people. There were docs done by, Rogers and Bell and MLSE and all these places. You got to relive the history of this franchise. 30 years. And it's so interesting that now, as we head into year 31, the guy who probably should have been celebrated the most last year was Masai Ujiri. And it's sad because it's another one of those things where you might not realize what you got till it's gone. So I think the first place we got to start here, before breaking down and talking about why this happened or what's next and all that other stuff, is we got to give enough time to salute the work that Masai Ujiri did. Because the reality is there's no Toronto Raptors as we know them right now without Masai Ujiri. That 12-year run that he had with this organization, obviously, we know he was in before under Brian Colangelo, left, went to Denver, and then came back and led the most successful, 8-year run that this organization has seen. And dare I say, there are few organizations who won as many games as the Toronto Raptors over that, Kyle DeMar 8-year run. There are very few organizations that won as many games as the Toronto Raptors in the regular season. Of course, the Raptors were able to cap it with the championship in 2019. And I'll be honest, I said this at the time while it was happening. I'm a basketball fan through and through. My career is in the NBA. I've worked covering basketball for the majority of my life for, damn near 20 years. My first year working in this industry was LeBron's rookie year. So I'm saying, I'm in this. I'm in the thick of it. I never actually thought that there would be a world where I was watching the Toronto Raptors win an NBA championship. The way that I always viewed basketball was there was the NBA season that I was into and I was paying attention to, and you're watching Kobe, you're watching all these things, you're watching all these other things, you're watching LeBron, you're watching all these other guys. And then there was the Raptors. And I love basketball and I was cheering for the Raptors. I wanted them to succeed and I was watching both things go along, but it was almost as if I was always watching two different seasons. And the reality is it wasn't until Masai Ujiri that I actually believed that the Raptors could win an NBA championship. That wasn't something that I thought was possible watching this team, covering this team, and he did it. And the biggest thing that he should be remembered for, there's a lot of Masai moments, a lot of Masai quotables, a lot of things. But that Kawhi press conference when he said, believe in yourself, that changed everything. I think the interesting part, right, is that Masai Ujiri came in and he had the attitude that, of course, we can do this. Why can't we do this? And then he did it. You see, the position that he has, you run into a lot of people that talk a big game. They're great talkers. They're great speakers. That's how they get to that platform, right? Because you're able to articulate your thoughts. You're able to execute. Well, you're supposed to be able to execute, but you're so well-spoken. You can walk into a room. You could sell anything. You could sell water to a whale. But the difference with Masai Ujiri was he actually did it. And we know that the whole thing, how the run really started, the Kyle DeMar run, traded away Rudy Gay, they kind of stumbled into this thing where it started to roll. And then next thing you know, the We the North movement is here. Raptors are in the playoffs playing the Nets. And all of a sudden you're here. On the brink of the team about to be broken up, you actually ended up starting a new era of the franchise, an era that ultimately ended with a championship. And along the way, at the top of that was Masai Ujiri. And you can say, hey, we had this talk about the greatest Raptor of all time, Kyle Lowry. And I always said it's Kawhi, but that's an argument for another day. But the reality is, the greatest Raptor of all time is Masai Ujiri. Without a doubt. You can say whatever you want, but Kyle Lowry, before he came to Toronto, before he was able to butt heads with Masai Ujiri and Masai Ujiri to stand up to Kyle Lowry and make Kyle Lowry believe in Kyle Lowry and the Toronto Raptors. If that doesn't happen, there's no chip. I'm sure if you ask Kyle Lowry will tell you Masai made him a lot of money. Not even in just the fact that obviously he's the one signing the contracts. But if you go back and you remember how this organization went, what was going on at the time, there were conversations with Masai Ujiri and Kyle Lowry where they're sitting them down and they're having the discussion, hey, your career can go in multiple ways right now. You've bounced around. You've been on a bunch of different teams. If you want to set your family up for generational wealth, it's right here in front of you. You can be an okay player, or you can be a franchise-altering player. You can be an all-star. You can be a leader. You can be a max player in this league. But it's up to you. Again, I go back to the words of the Kawhi presser. Believe in yourself. That was a message to the team. That was a message to the city. That was a message to everyone. And I think that, that part will never be forgotten. I think that we need to, while we do the whole, oh no, what's next? What's going to happen? All of that, try to play the blame game. How do we end up here? All that stuff. We need to make sure that within that, we're taking time to appreciate what we had. And those of you that were here rocking with, I know this is Canada Hoops Daily. You see it says wrap it up. Those have been following me for a while know we did the Wrap It Up podcast during the 2019 championship run. And one of the things I would say all the time was enjoy this because you don't know how long it's going to last. But that was a season that the Raptors had where they had one of those guys and they had a real shot at winning the championship. And they did it. And the message then was to enjoy it because you don't know how long it lasts, but also you always want to remember what that feeling was like. And it's funny watching the championship parades that happened this week. We saw Oklahoma City, which I think people did the Oklahoma City dirty in some of the shots they had of the overhead shots of the parade. Like you could tell there were different spots of the parade route where it looked way more packed than some of the other shots. And it's kind of unfair, people mocking that. But you see those shots, you see the Florida Panthers partying at a random bar called the Elbow Room, and you see those parades, and I can't help but when I see those things, I watch the Raptors parade and just think that was a movie. That was not real life. But Masai did that. Yes, there were a lot of other people involved for sure, and he's going to be the first one to give all the praise to all the people that were in the organization. He's going to give all the praise to the fan base that supported and all that. But Masai did that. Those streets were packed because of that man. There's not a lot of GMs. There's not a lot of front office people that would have had the balls to trade DeMar DeRozan at that point, to trade away the face of their franchise at the time, the best friend of the other face of the franchise, and put all your chips in the middle of the table for Kawhi Leonard at that point. We look back at that moment now, and it seems like, like, oh, that was great, whatever. But like, we were there. I'm here to remind people when that trade happened, the fan base was like 50-50. People can lie about it now, but I remember when that trade happened, there are a lot of people upset that Masai did that. And I get it. It's the face. DeMar was the face. DeMar wanted to stay. DeMar was a great kid. We watched him grow up. Like, I understood all of that. I get it. But Kawhi was different. And Masai knew that. I think the part that has me so much wanting this to be more of a celebration of Masai as opposed to who's to blame about all this and what went wrong and what's next and how could this possibly happen. It's because those moments are going to live forever. There's going to be generation of kids that are going to be telling their kids about that Raptors parade. You're going to hear all the stories about where people were when that happened. People are always going to be telling the stories about where they were when the Raptors won the championship. All of those things exist. And that's because Masai Ujiri believed in himself, believed in the Raptors, and believed in us as a city. There's not another executive in this city ever that you can say did what Masai Ujiri did. I know people are going to talk about Paul Beeston and obviously the Jays had their run, and I get that. The Jays won back-to-back championships, and I understand that, right? And at the time, baseball obviously was, baseball was at a different place than basketball is in the city of Toronto and in the country of Canada. But I'll stand here and say that the things that people involved in basketball are working against are unlike other things that other sports and other teams have to deal with. There's just a lot of other factors going against basketball in this country and in this city that Masai not only bust down the door, but like stepped through and led the charge to make a lot of people a whole lot of money, including MLSE. You got to think, right? The one thing I think about all the time about the Raps parade was that even at the pinnacle, winning the championship, no one in this city still understood how many people care about the Toronto Raptors. Like, there's been people telling you how big of a deal basketball is, how big of a market Toronto is, how big the country of Canada is, and all the people that care about the Raptors. And even as they won a championship, all of the people at the top still had no idea what those numbers were actually like, because when you look at how that parade was planned and how many people showed up, how many more people showed up than were anticipated, that just tells you everything you need to know. I think this is an interesting time, Raptors fans, and I get it. There's a lot of people. The chat is flowing up. Shouts to all the people in the chat right now. I'll go through and start reading some comments. So if you have comments, please don't hesitate to send it into the chat. Big shouts if you're watching this on YouTube. Go to the YouTube page, like the video, hit the subscribe button, all that fun stuff. We're on YouTube at Sheldon Alexander. Also, we are streaming live on Instagram. So if you go to the Instagram account, it's Canada Hoops Daily. Also, bless that video with the like. Bless, hit us with the share button, all that fun stuff on Instagram. Follow the account that is Canada Hoops Daily for more content. And just join the conversation because I want to hear from Raptors fans. I want to hear from, just anybody with the take right now because we want this to be a safe space to discuss what just happened. And yes, there's a lot of people in the chat talking about Rodgers and what's going on here. And they have a lot of questions about the roles that were played. And there's going to be a press conference to be held at 1 p.m. Where hopefully there'll be some answers there, right? In terms of what's next, what the plan is for the Toronto Raptors. And, I think the most important thing to do in this moment without more information is to celebrate what was. And the other part is, I think we talked about this on the pod and I kind of tiptoed around it, but we talked about it on the pod a couple weeks ago about how, especially after Brendan Shanahan was out and the way that they parted ways, the Toronto Maple Leafs and Shanahan parted ways, that this was on the table. I talked about it in the sense that if you paid attention to what was going on with the Toronto Raptors and the sudden, how do you phrase it? Change in direction, if that makes sense. And what I mean is, they were talking about a tank last year, and then all of a sudden the trade deadline, they trade for Brandon Ingram. And I don't mind that trade. I get it. I understand it. I think that Brandon Ingram is, obviously an upgrade to the Raptors roster, an upgrade that's definitely needed on the Raptors roster. But as that season went along, it was kind of, they're trying to tank, but they also have Brandon Ingram. They shut him down, trying to retain their chances of getting a high draft pick. Ping pong balls don't really go their way. They end up at 9th. And, what did that lead to? Led to a lot of rumors about what's going on with Giannis. And we did that whole song and dance again about Masai's relationship with Giannis. And if Giannis wanted out of Milwaukee, Toronto might be a destination that he would be open to going to because we know of the relationship that Masai Ujiri has with Giannis Antetokounmpo and his family. And at that time, there's a lot of other things going on, right? Like we know behind the scenes now, Rodgers ended up purchasing MLSE. And if you were paying attention to what was going on during that time, Rodgers hired a new president in terms of Keith Pelly. And the other teams in MLSE, they ended up getting rid of their presidents. So if you think of the structure of what MLSE used to be, right? Go back to the old, system where essentially it was Bell, Rodgers, and Larry Tannenbaum. Those were the entities that owned Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment and the Raptors. Masai Ujiri got here because Tim Leiweke, who was then the president of MLSE, brought in Masai Ujiri, Brandon Shanahan to run those two teams, right? They then brought in GMs. Masai still was GM for a while, but Shanahan brought in GMs below him. And either way, the structure was there was a general manager and then there was a president for each of those teams, right? And with the change in ownership that we recently saw where Rodgers took over the entire MLSE, since then, we noticed that the TFC president has been gone. Brendan Shanahan, the Leafs president, also gone. And so Masai Ujiri, this all was timing out with Masai Ujiri and the Raptors in the offseason involved in basically all the trade talks of any superstar that was available. And at that time, there were some that deemed that as okay, what's happening here? Is this, we know Masai's heading into the final year of his contract. Is this a scenario where he's trying to keep his job or make it harder for them to get rid of him if he pulls off landing Giannis Antetokounmpo? And who knows? Because the other part of this is there's going to be stories that are going to come out tomorrow, the next day, the next day, the next day, that are all going to be, you're going to have people talking about sources, and sources tell me this and sources tell me that. And, there's stories that are going to be leaked out, right? Because that's just how the game goes. Like, there was a story that was leaked out after the championship about, remember, Raptors won the championship. Masai didn't have a contract after the Raptors won the championship. And there was some turmoil behind the scenes at MLSE about who wanted Masai to get a new contract and who didn't, right? So all of those things are playing out in the background now as Rodgers takes over MLSE. I will say this. The fact that this happened the day after the draft, obviously there was a deal. I shouldn't say obviously. I would assume that there was a deal that was in place that Masai would stay on board through the NBA draft. He wasn't going to leave the team before the draft, right? Knowing if that was a scenario, I could undoubtedly see this as a thing where Masai, in all honesty, was doing everything he could to try to bring in Kevin Durant, to try to bring in Giannis, whoever it was, you know what I mean? Try to get one of those dudes and then leave. So that if he was out, he was leaving the team in a good spot. And now it all kind of like adds up and makes sense, even getting Brandon Ingram at the trade deadline. I think there was a big point for Masai Ujiri. He just strikes me as that kind of guy who would want to leave the team not in the lottery, not in the bottom basement, not in a position to be tanking again. Masai Ujiri doesn't strike me as that guy. He strikes me as a guy that would want to be leaving the team in a place where they are once again trying to compete for the playoffs. And you can do nothing but respect that. And obviously I'm connecting a lot of dots. I don't know that, right? I'm just saying, I'm just having a conversation about a guy that obviously that I've met, talked to, interviewed, all that fun stuff, but like a real one. I don't really know a better way to put it, a more honest and true way to put it than a true, real one. And just say that, listen, I could definitely see this of all playing out, that he knew that the most likely scenario was that he was done after this past season and he just didn't want to leave the team in a place where they were tanking. And here we are. So there's a lot of stuff online here. I'm going to take some time because I think it's important too to go through and just read some stuff that's going on online from other reporters and just what some of the talk is. There's a lot of thank you Masai's, and I got to echo that and think that that is the main place where we got to be with a lot of this talk, because I know the first thought from Raptors fans is to be upset, is to point fingers, is to try to play the blame game and do all that. And I get it. And I understand, because this is tough. Big business is tough, right? But I think it's also important to celebrate the good, to celebrate the positive. And, we got to do that, right? As I read this stat here from Sportsnet Stats, it says the Raptors were 545 and 419 record under Ujiri since the 2013-2014 season, which is fifth best in the NBA. So that's what I was talking about earlier, right? That's the level of success that Masai Ujiri brought to this organization, to this city. The fifth best record in the NBA since 2013-2014. Again, when I tell you, been watching basketball, been covering basketball for a long time, and the success that Masai Ujiri brought to this city will never be forgotten. That's legendary stuff. That's legendary status. I got people in my chat sending me the classic, the iconic Tim and Sid, I believe I can I believe in Masai, which again, classic, legendary stuff, right? Wow. This is really a tough one. So I'm going to read this media release from MLSE. It says MLSE parts ways with Toronto Raptors president and vice chairman Masai Ujiri. Team leadership remains in place with contract extensions while a search for successor as team president begins immediately. I pause on that for a second because I don't know enough. Chat maybe can help me out. Someone can help me out here in the chat. What happened with the Leafs? Did they say that after Shanahan's gone that they were looking for a president as well? Someone in the chat help me out with that. But let me continue reading this media release here. Quote, during his 13 seasons with the Raptors, Masai helped transform the organization on the court and has been an inspirational leader off of it, said MLSE president and CEO Keith Pelly. He brought an NBA championship to Toronto and urged us to believe in this city and ourselves. We are grateful for all that he has done and wish him and his family the very best. As we plan the franchise's future and its return to the NBA playoffs, a search for the successor as president of the Raptors, led by CAA Executive Search, will begin immediately. As the search for a new team president commences, Raptors front office leadership remains in place with extensions for key personnel, including general manager Bobby Webster. Per team policy, terms of the deals will not be released. We are confident that the Raptors organization, under the guidance of Bobby and his team, is in a great place, Pelly said. Quote, they have a plan in place for next season and beyond as the team continues its rebuild, and we have the confidence in their ability to execute and ultimately to excel. We feel the team is in a strong, stable place, and we believe the addition of a new president will continue to move the Raptors forward towards our next NBA championship. Ujiri was named president of the Raptors in 2013, joining the team from the Denver Nuggets. Under his leadership, the Raptors won the 2019 championship, the first and only team outside the United States to do so. He is co-founder of Giants of Africa, an organization which uses sport as a tool to enrich the lives of youth on the continent and encourage them to dream big. Close quote, by the way, for those listening and not watching. My most interesting takeaway from that is that they're searching for a new president. I assume that they would just have Bobby Webster be the GM, and then he would report to Keith Pelly. But it's interesting. That's interesting to me. I'm stumbling because I'm tiptoeing around discussing certain things for obvious reasons, but it's interesting to me that you're going to search for a new president, because my thought would be, if you have Masai Ujiri and you're keeping Bobby Webster on board and you're looking for a new president, you would hope that the new president is better than your old president. I'm going to be honest, it's going to be tough to find a new president that's better than the old president, because there's very few people in the NBA. Like, if you did a league-wide poll of who are the best heads of states for every NBA team, Masai's got to be in that top 5, no? And he's not 5. He might not even be 4, if you catch the drift of what I'm saying. This is interesting. This is super interesting. I'm going to go through here and read some more from some of the reporters out here covering the Raps. Let's see here. I'm going to go to our guy, Michael Grange. Here's the thing, too, about this Raptors move. I don't know. I wonder if Bobby Webster is eligible to become president of the Raptors? Like, does he get to interview for the job? Right? It said he's signing a contract extension. So I assume that's an extension to be the GM, which is kind of weird because then a new president's going to come in. You would think in theory, wouldn't that new president, or if there is a new president at all, does that president come in and want to have their own person? I don't know. It's interesting. Anyways, as I said, let's read some more context here from some folks that do the real work of journalism and reporting, because I always would like to add in that journalism matters, reporting matters. Michael Grange of Sportsnet says, confirming Masai Ujiri is out as president and vice chairman of the Raptors. Ujiri was entering the final year of his 5-year contract. The move brings to close one of the most impactful eras any executive has had in Canadian sports, peaking with the 2019 NBA title. He credits Shams as being first to report it. Michael Grange also says MLSE President Keith Pelley will address the media regarding the ouster of Masai Ujiri today at 1 p.m. My understanding is that General Manager Bobby Webster reached an extension with the Raptors in the weeks before the news of Ujiri leaving the club was announced today. Rest of the management team had already gotten extensions prior to NBA Combine in May. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to read some more from Michael Grange in a sec. But that's an interesting note, because that tends to happen a lot. You see that around sports a lot, where if there's a president or a GM that feels that they might be on the way out, they take care of their guys and girls on the way out first. Like, if he knows that he's on his way out, he's going to make sure to give extensions to Bobby Webster and the team so that even if he's not here, those guys are taken care of. Again, Masai Ujiri, real one. All right, back to Mr. Grange. Mr. Grange says, two most pertinent details of the MLSE release, Ujiri, is that 1, Bobby Webster and exec team will remain in place, and 2, that they have hired an executive search firm to hire a successor as president. Yeah, I find that super interesting, because I thought the whole way, and even when we were talking about this weeks ago, I just thought the way that MLSE was going to shape things up was it was going to be, you have a general manager, and then that person goes directly into Keith Pelley. Maybe that's not the case for the Raptors. Maybe there's going to be different ways that each of the teams are going to run, right? Like the Leafs, maybe they're more comfortable with Brad Treliving being the general manager and reporting directly to Keith Pelley. Maybe they're more comfortable with that than Bobby Webster, who doesn't have the same experience as Brad Treliving does. And so maybe that's why there's still going to be a search for a new team president. But I will say that those things are tough, right? If you're bringing in, like if Bobby Webster and his team are already under contract and have just gotten extensions, and then you're bringing in a new team president, it's pretty tough. Because if that team president has just a different ideology in how they run an organization, how they draft, style of play, all of those things, how long does that unity exist in the top of your organization? And, it's unfair to jump that far ahead and talk about, hey, if the new guy comes in and he doesn't get along with Bobby Webster, like nobody knows any of that, right? Like that obviously is yet to be seen. They might not even actually end up hiring someone. Maybe that search firm comes back and it's like, hey, you're better with Bobby Webster, just promoting him. I don't know. I have no idea. But I'm just saying, especially the way that some NBA teams are run now, or most, let me rephrase that. The way that NBA teams are run now from the top down, like that person at the top decides the style of play, how you play, how you draft, the type of players you want. We'll use Memphis as an example, right? Memphis brought in a new front office and they tried to change the whole style of play, run this whole different offense. They've ended up firing their coach mid-season, but really you could see the writing on the wall because they changed that coach's assistants heading into the season. And on top of that, those assistants were coming in with a brand new offense. Right. And if you follow the Memphis Grizzlies, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like they did this whole offense where we don't really set screens. It was a lot of spacing and cutting and an unorthodox style of play, not only for the NBA, but for the team that they had, right? Like you had Ja Morant, one of the best pick and roll players, and all of a sudden you're telling him, hey, we don't run pick and rolls anymore. And that was because they brought in a new front office, right? That obviously didn't select the players that they had, but also didn't select the coach that they had. So it just changed the whole structure of what was being done. And you saw what ended up playing out in Memphis. They had their season. They started off okay, and then they just tailed off at the end. Talent got them so far, but ultimately the organization just wasn't on the same page, and they fizzled out at the end. I'm just saying the reason I bring all that up is to emphasize the importance of if you bring in a new president, it's going to be very key that they're on the same page as Bobby Webster and the rest of the team. That's all. Right? Because you see it in sports all the time. A president might want to bring in their own GM. A GM might want to bring in their own coach. All of those things are super interesting, right? And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, Darko got extended last year. I'm pretty sure I have that right. Interesting times in Raptor land, interesting times in MLSE land. Wow. Super interesting times in MLSE land, right? Let's see. I was looking here to see. Ooh, nope. Can't read that one. Listen, we're live here, folks. We are live. So there will be some tap dancing going on live by myself in terms of, dodging some comments here that I'm obviously not going to read into a live microphone. But send in your comments and questions. Let's read some comments from the chat here. Jeremy says, this is heartbreaking. Back to the Primo Pasta days. Listen, I don't think it's that bad. And I do think that you got to give Masai some credit on the way out. He definitely, in adding Brandon Ingram, and, I think they did a good job with the 9th pick overall. I do think that he left them in a spot where they should make the playoffs next year. I'm not saying they will, but I'm saying they should make the playoffs this year. And this is before free agency. So there could be moves that they have ready to go, trades that they want to make. I mean, their wing/forward positions seem to be a little cluttered right now. So my assumption would be there's probably some more moves on the way. So if this team makes the playoffs next year, I don't think we can be too upset with how Masai left the team on the way out. Were there a lot of moves post-championship that kind of were questionable, that probably didn't work out well? Of course. We can go through all of those moves and say, hey, they should have got more for Pascal. They should have got anything for Fred. They should have got something for OG. They should have got more for OG, pardon me. Actually, I think they did okay on the OG deal, if I'm being honest. Story for another day. But hey, I'll listen if you say they should have got more for Pascal. But reality is, Pascal turned into Brandon Ingram, Jacoby Walter, and I'm missing someone. Another pick. Ochai, maybe? Ochai was part of that deal where the trade went. My point is, I think they did okay in the getting rid of Pascal Siakam when they did. Right? I'm not saying that Brandon Ingram is as good as Pascal Siakam. It's not what I'm saying. But I think they did okay due to when they got rid of Pascal. So, listen. Yes, the Raptors were in some tough times post-championship, but I still think that at the end of the day, they are on the uptick and should find themselves in a playoff position next season. That's my thought. That's what I would say. Let me get to some more comments here. So Josh Lewenberg of TSN says, not entirely surprising given Ujiri's contractual situation and the recent changes atop MLSE, but very strange timing the morning after the draft. This more from Mr. Lewenberg. He says, quote, the last 5 years have been bumpy. 171 and 229 record, one playoff appearance, missteps and poor asset management / internal development. Rival execs have described Ujiri as being, quote, hard to deal with, close quote, citing his ego. It was time for a change, and the writing was on the wall with MLSE ownership shuffle. Oof, I don't know if I agree with all of that. Sounds a little harsh, but I will continue. Mr. Lewinberg doing his thing. And again, I give credit to the reporters who have the sources, who are doing the work, talking to different sources and front office people and execs across the league. So I do this for perspective, fans. Give you the information and let you do what you will with said information. Mr. Lewinberg says, Ujiri turned the Raptors into a world-class organization, shifting the way teams, players, fans view Toronto. But his legacy is the way he changed how this market views itself. His pride, passion for team, city, country. How he lifted it up. We the North. That's how he'll be remembered. Huge cosign on that. Huge cosign on that. He also says the Raptors, pardon me, let me do that again. Quote, the Raptors were an NBA afterthought when Ujiri took over in 2013, 5-year playoff drought, 1 playoff series win in their existence. Every star they ever had forced their way out. Since 8 playoff appearances, 9 series win, 1 championship, he completely reshaped their culture and image. See, that's the part that I was talking about off the top, right? And there is something that's kind of storybook and something kind of fitting of the Raptors celebrating the Raptors' 30th anniversary last year, because you went through the entire storyline of how they got here, all the key fixtures, all the key people, all the key players, and big shouts to the Sportsnet team, by the way, led by Paul Sadu and Mark McDonald, Adrian Chetty, all the editors that put that together. That doc was incredible. If you haven't seen it, go to YouTube and search Raptors Delight. That doc was absolutely incredible, breaking down the different eras in Raptors history. And it's so crazy to me because it's like at the end of, like, if last year we all knew Masai was leaving, or if, Masai was gone, Masai's the greatest Raptor of all time. He really is. But we weren't thinking of it in that because we were holding out hope that, hey, maybe Masai would be back. Maybe there was something to be worked out. And then I can't lie to you, the Giannis stuff that came up, because we've heard the Giannis stories in years past, right? We've heard about the talk of, hey, maybe this is a year Giannis is going to come to Toronto and he wants out of Milwaukee. Cool. There was part of me that hoped that maybe this year it was true, because that maybe would keep Masai here. Because I wanted Masai to be here forever. I can't lie. And I know that's not possible. I obviously know about the tensions behind the scenes and the whole tensions about his last contract negotiation and then how unlikely it was going to be going forward. But I was still holding out hope. And I definitely think Giannis, if there was something that might have been able to change things, Giannis might have been that thing. But yeah. Let's hear what Josh says about what was the Raptors announcement that they made, or their press release. He says, to sum up, Masai out, Bobby Webster has been extended and will stay on as GM. Rest of the Raptors leadership remains in place for now. MLSE intends to replace Ujiri with the new president. Surprising, given their plan to proceed without filling Leafs position after Shanahan ouster. That was my question earlier, right? Josh continues, not sure how appealing this presidency job is going to be with the GM and leadership team already in place and extended, as well as MLSE essentially doing away with the position elsewhere. Will be interesting to hear what Keith Pelly has to say. He'll speak to the media at 1 p.m. That is a really interesting point, right? Like, it's going to be interesting. And I mean, it's right now, as I'm recording this, it's 11:15. I highly doubt I will still be recording at 1 p.m. I also got to go anyways. Yeah. I'm not going to say that into a mic either, but it's 11 right now. So I don't know if the comments keep flowing in and the people want the chat to keep going in. We will obviously keep chatting because that's what we do here, right? We want to be a place for Raptors fans to discuss, to celebrate. I can't keep emphasizing that enough. I had to bring out the championship tee. See the hat behind me that's always going to be there forever. Feel like I got to get a picture of Masai for the office too. Things you got to think about. But I am going to make it my duty to make sure that part of today is celebrating Masai Ujiri and all that he did for the Toronto Raptors, because I definitely think that that is a super important thing to keep in mind. Celebrate what was. Appreciate all that Masai Ujiri did for this city, for this team, for this country. So this from Ryan Woolstat of the Toronto Sun. Ryan Woolstat. Wow, a colleague got a tip on this a couple weeks ago. We followed up, but there was zero smoke. Masai stopped to chat with us 2 days ago in the media room and nothing seemed afoot. Continues, Rogers' vision of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment has one president of any of the teams still standing, Blue Jays boss Mark Shapiro, and Edward Rogers' favorite, believe he's on an expiring deal, but Jays beat people can confirm. Interesting. Let's see here. He also notes that, interesting note, that the Raptors intend to hire a new president, which everyone's talking about. Let's see. He says, this from Ryan Woolstat, who again is a writer for the Toronto Sun, been covering the Raptors forever and ever and ever. Again, try to shout out the OGs, the real ones, doing the work and covering and interviewing and boots on the ground, I'll say. Ryan Woolstat says, Masai won't be out of work long. He has assembled a strong staff and had told us in May he was working on getting the likes of Bobby Webster and Dan Tolman signed to new deals. Clarity will be coming. Raptors saying release. Webster and staff have been secured to extensions. He reads some quotes here from the presser. Woolstat also says, okay, and I'm emphasizing this, that these are the words of Ryan Woolstat, okay? He says, interesting to note. Nope, wrong tweet. Again, we're live, okay? Unpolished, unapologetic, right? At least I don't lie to you guys, right? Keep it moving as is. Ryan Woolstat says, make no mistake, MLSE is in a cost-cutting mode, not going full-scale cheap, but not looking to spend huge money on execs. That's a significant part of reason Shanahan and Ujiri are out. Whew. There's another interesting comment on that I will not read into a microphone for obvious reasons. This is an interesting time. I mean, I can't believe like Keith Pelly to be the president of both, like all of MLSE, cool, but of the Raptors and Leafs right now in this moment, like today, what's the date? June 27th, just days before July 1st. And if you know about what's going on with the Leafs right now, Mitch Marner and Tavares and Nyes, and then now Masai's out with the Raptors, like Keith Pelly, that's a busy job right now. He's earning that MLSE check right now, because that's a lot of stress going down right now. This is a crazy time for the Toronto Raptors. And I just think, the other part is I wonder what's next for Masai, because if we connect some dots, okay, and I'm just connecting dots. I don't know this. We're connecting dots. But if we know that Masai Ujiri is out, we know that Larry Tannenbaum, because Rogers is taking a controlling share of MLSE, Tannenbaum still owns some of MLSE, but we know that there's an opt-out for him as well. And if we pay attention to what's happened already with the fact that the WNBA team was rumored to have been brought to MLSE, and MLSE didn't want to do it. Or we'll say parts of MLSE didn't want to do it. So Mr. Tannenbaum decides that he's going to do it on his own. He hires Masai's number 2 in the organization to run the Toronto Tempo that we see now that's about to get underway next season. We also know that the Toronto Tempo are going to play some of their home games in Montreal and Vancouver starting next season. We also know that last week, Adam Silver did an interview on one of those Fox talk shows, and he said they were talking about expansion, and he brought up, what about Canada? Is there a possibility for another team in Canada? I'm just saying, if we connect some dots, it's not crazy to put those dots together and think, Again, I don't know that. That's me connecting a lot of dots. A lot of dots. Why is this Toronto WNBA team going to play games in Montreal and Vancouver? Why would they want to do that? I don't know. We already know Mr. Tannenbaum hired Teresa Resch, Masai's number 2, away from MLSE when he was starting the Toronto Tempo. Interesting. The timing of this all just seems, again, I don't know that. I'm just connecting dots. I'm just a dude talking into a microphone like a lot of random schmucks these days. So take that again. I just provide information, let you do with said information what you want. Let me read some more comments. Tyson says, I think we have to trade RJ. I'm very interested to see what this Raptors team looks like with Bobby Webster firmly at the helm, right? Because the other part of post-championship Raptors and Masai Ujiri obviously being bumped up, to vice chair, and Bobby Webster obviously, taking a lot of the reins, and Dan Tolman and those guys. I wonder, we never know how much of the moves over the past post-championship, what's the pie of, is Masai just coming in at the end to yay or nay? How in depth has Masai been in some of those draft picks? Talking about you, Grady Dick. But I'm curious, right? In terms of what the pie was, in terms of how these things were working. Was it the same structure as pre-championship, or let's say earlier on in that run, where we know Masai had his fingerprints over every move? It's interesting, right? It's also cool to hear Bobby Webster talk on the Will Lou pod. They did an interview with him last week, and he was talking about how the Kawhi Leonard deal came to be, and him talking with the GM of him speaking with the GM of the San Antonio Spurs at the time, and how the talks just started, and he didn't really realize that he was being serious. They want to move off. There's interest there in terms of moving off Kawhi, and is there something there with the Raptors? Right? So we know Bobby Webster obviously has been involved at the highest of levels in terms of all the moves being made for the Raptors. We know that. But now, he's the guy. And this is a very big offseason for the Toronto Raptors, because the stakes in the Eastern Conference, if you haven't been paying attention, we know that Jason Tatum's out for the season. So that's the Boston Celtics, who obviously were tops, even though we know Cleveland probably had a better record. Nobody really, if we're being honest, really thought that Cleveland was better than Boston, right? So you get what I'm saying there. Anyways, you look at the Eastern Conference, and the Boston Celtics, no Jason Tatum next year. They are obviously traded away Kristaps Porzingis. They traded away Drew Holiday. So they're going to take a step back next year, right? The New York Knicks, the 3rd seed last year, they still don't have a coach. The Cavs, who knows what they're going to do, but I would assume with the moves of these other teams, the Cavs are probably like, hey, if we just run it back and Garland's healthy, maybe we're okay. The Indiana Pacers, who obviously made the Eastern Conference Finals, they made the NBA Finals. Tyrese Halliburton's out all of next season. So you would anticipate they take a step back. Milwaukee Bucks, who were in 5th place, they lose Dame Lillard. He's out for next season. So you assume they're going to take a step back. So then now when you look at the East, again, we went from the Cavs, the Knicks, and then you would assume Boston, Indy, and Milwaukee all take a step back. That means 3 of the top 6 teams all losing one of their star players for all of next season. So then if you keep going, right? 6, you had the Detroit Pistons. Interesting spot. They obviously had to come up last year. Jaden Ivey will be back. Do they make a move up the ladder? The Orlando Magic, who are in 7th, they made the Desmond Bane trade. Seems to be a good key piece. And really, if you think about it, they're getting back Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs, who was hurt for the majority of last season. So you could look at that and say, hey, a 41-41 season, 7th place finish. You're adding 2 key pieces, 2 starters. Maybe they make a move up. The Miami Heat, I got to be honest, I have no idea what the Miami Heat are doing, but anything is possible with them. They're always just lurking. The Atlanta Hawks, they added Kristaps Porzingis. Obviously, they had Jalen Johnson hurt, and, so he's going to come back. Kristaps, you would hope, is healthy next season, right? Because Kristaps had a very weird year. But for sure, if you get Jalen Johnson back, who missed most of or the end of last season with injury, how does he fit in? Reese Shea going to be in his 2nd year. I think he had a pretty solid rookie season, right? So you give him another year. Okongwu was great for them as well, right? The Dyson Daniels move looked great with Trae Young in that backcourt. So how do they look? You assume that they're going to make a move up the Eastern Conference, right? But you're the Raptors. You don't fear that, right? After the Hawks, you had the Chicago Bulls in 10th. Definitely don't fear the Chicago Bulls. And then you have the Raps. And if you tell me that the Raptors are adding Brandon Ingram to the team they had last year, and it's another year under Darko, they're obviously not resting guys at the end of games and stuff and like fully going all season. You can't tell me the Raptors shouldn't be fighting for 8th place, 7th place, knocking on the door of 6th in that Eastern Conference. Again, I'm not saying guaranteed and they're definitely going to do it. Just saying you could talk me into it. Because the Nets, no idea what they're doing. The Sixers, anytime you tell me you're relying on Joel Embiid, still, we don't believe you need more people. Yeah. The Hornets are the Hornets. I'll always need to see it before I believe it. And then there's the Washington Wizards who, same thing. So my point is, if you're the Toronto Raptors, when you look at that Eastern Conference, you can't tell me you're one move away. You're not one move away from being like, hey, we are competing in that Eastern Conference next year. You heard in the press release, they have an expectation. They think that they, will be competing for the playoffs next year. So yeah. There's a lot of stuff floating online, and I'll say this much, that there's a lot of stuff that are floating back to Masai's last contract negotiation and how that went down. Because there's a whole thing about how one of the owners didn't want to re-sign Masai to as big of a contract as he was getting. There's a bit of an ownership battle there between the 3 owners of the team. One of the owners tried to go to the league to get it vetoed. And this is all reported. This is all in the Toronto Star. You can Google it and go back and read the stories. But basically, it was one of the owners were trying to stop or didn't want to keep Masai Ujiri at the price tag that he was getting. And it turned into this whole argument behind the scenes. The league had to get involved in terms of figuring out, well, who actually does have veto power between the 3 owners. And of course, we know how it played out because Masai ended up staying for the next 5 years post-championship, right? So there's a lot of that stuff floating out there, and I get it. And that does, you put some pieces together, it does kind of make sense. And the reality is, listen, that's a long run for any executive to be with a team, right? So this has been a successful run. It's never going to last forever. It sucks in the moment right now because you're thinking as a fan of the team, you're thinking, well, what's next? Who's the next president that's going to come in? How's that going to work? But the reality is, I'm interested to see if, I'll say this much, it'll be very telling if Masai takes another job elsewhere in the NBA. And if he doesn't, then yeah, what I was talking about a little earlier about expansion and expansion to Canada. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I think another interesting part of this whole Masai Ujiri thing is if Bobby Webster, I think this is interesting, right? Because you could tell over the last few years, there's obviously much more of a focus in terms of getting Bobby Webster in front of the camera more, right? Putting him in interviews, making sure that my phone is going crazy right now. Yeah, there's a lot there. Oof. I got to leave that one for a sec here. But I just think it's super interesting because at the end of the day, if you're the Toronto Raptors, you have to wonder, this is Bobby Webster's time now, right? Like he's the guy. All eyes will be pointing at Bobby Webster to make all the moves. There's no Masai anymore the beauty of Masai was even after some of those bad recent seasons, he would come out there in the press conference and put on this $1 million smile. He'd have all the great quotes. He said, we want to compete for a championship again. And you leave watching that press conference and you believe it. And the reality is that's part of the job, is to be able to make people believe in whatever your plan is. And so next up for Bobby Webster, the reality is that's also part of the game. And I've seen Bobby in interviews. Bobby's smooth, he's a good dude. And I think I'm very interested to see, though, how this all plays out, because the Raptors are in such an interesting position right now with no more Masai Ujiri. And it's tough for me because, as I've been saying, right, Masai Ujiri is the Toronto Raptors to me. That's the crazy part. And I don't know how that changes. I don't know how, you bring in someone else to be the president. And I undoubtedly that person stepping into Masai's shoes, what Josh says is true. It's going to be tough for whoever that new person who comes in, because again, you're coming into a job in which the GMs and the front office has already been extended. The coach has been extended, and you're coming into an organization where the other teams don't have a president. So what does that mean? Do you have a short leash? Are you coming in and how long is your leash going to be if all the people that you're inheriting are already on extensions? It's going to be super interesting to see how this all plays out. And I don't know what the right answer is. I really don't know. But bottom line is Masai Ujiri, the god, is Toronto. And I know a lot of people, I see Woody Page, shouts to Woody Page, who, if you know Around the Horn, Woody Page, says the Nuggets should bring back Masai Ujiri immediately to be the president of basketball operations. Man, wouldn't Denver like that about now? Yeah, that would make sense for Denver. Seems to be in some trouble right now. The championship run for Masai Ujiri is legendary and will make him a legend. I wish there was a way, and I know this sounds crazy, but I wish there was a way to put Masai in the banner, have him give him a banner in the ACC or something, a statue outside the ACC, some way to honor Masai Ujiri. I don't know what that is. I definitely don't, but I'm willing to listen to suggestions, because everything that he did is incredible. I'm going to read this comment from Steve Simmons, who is a Toronto Sun reporter as well. You might know him as best friends with Austin. I'm joking. He's not best friends with Austin Matthews. If you know, you know. Steve Simmons says Masai Ujiri is out as president and heart and soul of the Toronto Raptors. This is a large mistake by Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. You don't find people of this quality often. You'll hear a lot of media people say all the right things about Masai Ujiri, and it's because he is a true real one, right? Like, he will always shake your hand. He will always say hello to you, even though he doesn't know who you are, but he sees you walking through the back media hallways. He'll always be someone to shake your hand and say hello, ask how you're doing, make sure everything's okay. That's just the kind of person that he is. Whether or not you as a media person, bringing up Steve Simmons here, has agreed with whatever he's done or not agreed with. Very respectful, very good dude. And, you know, that's before we get into all the Giants of Africa stuff, which is just like real life impact, right? Like I'm mad at myself almost that I've gone an hour talking on this and haven't really even brought up the real life impact of Masai Ujiri and what he's done just around the world and for the continent of Africa and the millions of dollars that he's made to help the organizations, right? The millions of dollars that he's put into helping grow the game of basketball and just use it as a tool to give a better life to so many people of Africa, but also just showing the world of what people are capable of when you give them opportunity. Like, the real world impact of Masai Ujiri, you can't even really sum it up with words, right? The impact is what we see with the players now getting drafted in the NBA, and, you know, and whether it's, you know, him being able to get Embiid or Siakam to like go back and help out. All of those things that Masai Ujiri has done, the millions of dollars that he's raised for charity, for his charity, for, you know, Giants of Africa, putting that on the map. There's a Basketball Africa League. Like, there's so much that Masai Ujiri has done off the court that also makes him the GOAT in this city. All of it is really cool. And I really think that that should be a bigger part of today as well. There's going to be, again, I'm stressing this. There's going to be a lot of time to point fingers and be like, this was a bad move and blame game. And why is this not happening? And I get it. I understand it. But I'm begging people to take today at least to celebrate Masai Ujiri and give respect to the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT, the God, Masai Ujiri, for everything that he did for this city, this team, this country. I'm going to say it, and I'm going to be very honest too. For me, seeing a black man as an executive at a high up company, corporation as MLSE, come on. You can't even speak to what that means to so many people to look up and see someone like them that's telling you to believe in yourself. Believe in us. Believe in we. That We the North movement is real. It was a thing. Anyways, my point is celebration is key. Let's get to some more comments here. Let me go to some comments in the chat. Again, big shouts to all the people in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, super appreciate it. YouTube page is Sheldon Alexander. Click in there, join the chat, join the conversation. The people are fired up. They're having a conversation in there, and big shouts to them. I'm going to read some of those comments. Big shouts to people watching on YouTube. And of course, there's a live stream also on the Canada Hoops Daily Instagram page. Really appreciate the people in there as well. Send in your comments and questions if you have them. That's Canada Hoops Daily on Instagram. Like and follow the page there. And of course, there's a Twitch stream. Can't forget about the people on Twitch. That stream is under On Blast Podcast. Yes, I know. There's a lot of different places to watch the pod. Watch and listen to the pod. Obviously, the best way is to just follow me on socials at Shell Alexander on Instagram. No, sorry. Let me do that again and do that correctly. At Shell Alexander on Twitter and Sheldon Alexander on Instagram. Those are the places where you'll always be able to find out links and where the pods are and what brand it's under, whether it's Canada Hoops Daily, whether it's Clutch Points. There's lots going on. But if you just follow me on socials, I'll be able to direct you, and you're getting the same show, right? You can follow, the On Blast page will have the pod. The Canada Hoops Daily page will have the pod. So if you follow those accounts, one of those, you'll be able to hear me talking into a microphone about this day and what's going on with the Raps. More comments. Let's see. Elijah's asking, "Are we cooked?" Chat ? With some crying emojis. Gio says, "Ingram was an attempt for Masai to save his job. Failure to land a second fish cost Masai his job." I don't know if that's true. I think that it's an interesting way to look at it, right? I don't know if he was trying to save his job, because I do think that Masai Ujiri is the kind of dude that also, if he knew that there was a chance that this was the end, he just wouldn't want to leave the team in like a bad, terrible tanking spot. So I think that's what the Brandon Ingram thing was about. I think that's what the Giannis rumors were about. If Masai knows that he's out, he wasn't going to leave this team in a position where, hey, next year you're tanking again. It's not what he was going to do. Here's another comment here that says, "Toronto market is just constantly waiting for change and growth, and stagnation is avoided. It's less qualification and more evolution based with ownership wanting to affect the long-term outcome more." Those are a lot of words, and I don't even know what I just read, but I'll keep going here. Paul says, "Back up the Brinks truck to Brad Stevens and Sam Presti. ... Yes, I'm delusional." Imagine that. It wouldn't really make sense if you don't want to pay Masai Ujiri a lot of money, so then you're going to go pay Sam Presti to leave the championship team. It's pretty funny. Well played. Well played. Here's a good comment from Scramble. Says, "Masai didn't leave any untradeable bad contracts on the books." Yeah, I mean, reality is, even if you don't like the Emmanuel Quickley deal, you're seeing some of the contracts being handed out, or you are about to see some of the contracts being handed out this summer, and you're going to look at that Quickley deal and be like, actually, that's not that bad. Another comment that just says, "Man, I'm so devastated. LOL." Another comment here says, "If Kawhi didn't play his way out of the Spurs, would anyone ever hold Ujiri to the level he is held at? The NBA is a game of superstars, and Ujiri missed his chance with the Giannis draft." I mean, now we're playing the what if game. Like, you could do that. You could do that about anything. Like, literally anything. What if Kawhi doesn't want to get Paul George to go to the Clippers? Then OKC doesn't get Shea, and he's not the MVP this year, and they don't win the championship. And is OKC still struggling in the post KD, Russ, James Harden era? Yeah, I don't know if I like that one, but hey, appreciate the comment, right? Try to talk it out. Someone else asking to give the OKC general manager a call and all the money. We need management that can draft and develop and trade for superstars. Yeah, I mean, whew, that's tough. This is tough. You go through the Masai Ujiri era, right? And you go through like the draft history, and you realize just the strength of what this Raptors team was, top to bottom. Was it didn't matter where they were drafting in the draft. It didn't even matter about the draft, because they could find a Fred VanVleet who was undrafted and have him be a key piece to a championship team. You could figure out the fact that Pascal was in the 20s. OG was in the 20s. Norm Powell comes in a trade, which, that was a draft pick acquired, and you end up selecting Norm in the second round. You have all these guys develop in the G League, and they built up their G League team and had their G League team produce so many players that ended up being key cogs in the championship team. And then even drafting Jakob Poeltl and DeLon Wright and having them be pieces that you're able to then trade and help your championship team going forward. You got to build your team through the draft. You saw it with OKC, And you saw it with the Indiana Pacers, right? Small market teams, and I know the Raptors are not a small market, but we'll rephrase it and say in terms of places that aren't free agent destinations. So you're not getting, LeBron's not going to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I want to go to the Raptors tomorrow," right? Like he did with the Lakers. And everyone's like, "Oh, great job, Magic. Magic got LeBron." And it's like, no, the Lakers, LA got LeBron. Anyway, story for another day. But the point is, if you're one of those teams, we just saw it with OKC, we just saw it with the Indiana Pacers, we saw it with the championship team the Raptors built. You have to draft well, you have to accumulate assets, and you have to develop your young talent. And from there, you're able to push your assets into the table, make the right trades at the right time, i.e. Kawhi, i.e. Marc Gasol, and there you go. It's interesting. More comments here from the chat. It says, people are crazy if they say that Masai just made it because of the Kawhi trade. People have no clue. Masai's been amazing. Kawhi is just a small piece of what Masai did. I would not say a small piece. I would say he's a very big piece, but your point is well taken. He also goes on to say, Masai brought Gasol, Green. Masai brought in Serge. Shouts to Serge. Big shouts to Serge. Masai built the bench mob. Masai found Fred. Masai found Pascal when everyone laughed at his pick. Listen, preach. The chat is on fire right now. Hit some likes in the chat. Really appreciating all the comments in the chat. Really appreciating it. Keep blessing the likes on the chat. And if you're in the chat right now, hit the like button on the video. Really appreciate that as well. I'm going to read some more comments. We're cooking here. I didn't realize how long this chat's been going on for, but I appreciate all the people tuning into this Canada Hoops Daily podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander. In case you are unfamiliar, thank you for tuning in to the Canada Hoops Daily podcast, and make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe wherever you get said podcasts, because, we appreciate that. We do. We really do. Let me read this from Ian Bagley. And again, I like to mention who these people are, because give credit where credit is due to the reporters, right? See, we read some comments from reporters. We read the information there. We also read the comments from the chat. Ian Bagley, who is the New York Knicks beat writer, who's plugged in, reporter covering the Knicks and Nets and the NBA for SNY TV. Shout out to SNY. Go Mets. But Ian Bagley says, ESPN reports that Masai Ujiri is out in Toronto. Opposing executives have long believed that the Raptors' new majority ownership, Rogers Communication, could make a change at the top with Ujiri. Raptors officials downplayed the possibility, with Ujiri saying in April that everything was operating normally under the new structure. Ujiri was under contract for one more season. Speculation around his future stemmed in part from previous disagreements between Ujiri and executives from Rogers, and also in part due to the sentiment that the Rogers ownership would be hesitant to pay Ujiri the large salary he was earning on his current deal. Ujiri is reportedly earning $15 million per year. Let's be honest here about something, right? $15 million per year is a lot of money, right? There's very few organizations in the NBA or even in other pro franchises that are going to pay an executive $15 million a year, right? Like that's close to what players make. Like there are players in the league making $15 million. $15 million a year is more than Connor McDavid, right? So I think people have to put in perspective what ownership groups value, right? And I'm very much tiptoeing around what I'm saying right now. We get to put in perspective what ownership groups value. And if you're in Canada and you own the Toronto Maple Leafs and you're trying to win a Stanley Cup, and Mitch Marner you're arguing and debating, are you going to pay Mitch Marner $12 million or $12.5 million or whatever it is? And then on the other side, you have the organization, the Toronto Raptors, which maybe you might not be as invested in personally. I'll phrase it that way. and you have to pay an executive of that team $15 million more than Mitch Marner. Again, I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying it's interesting. Because, of course, Raptor fans, right? If the diehard Raptor fans are going to be like, whatever, pay Masai whatever he wants. Masai should own the team. Masai brought us a championship. Like, that's just not how the reality of how business is done, whether we like it or not. That's not my opinion. That's fact, right? $15 million a year, if that's what the reports are, that's a lot of money. And so if someone feels uncomfortable with paying an executive of, if we're being honest, it's called Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, right? So someone who plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs to make less money than an executive of the secondary team, regardless of what we think and regardless of what the valuations are for the Toronto Raptors, we know, like, I'm not shocking anyone here if I say that the Maple Leafs are obviously more important to MLSE than the Toronto Raptors. I don't think I'm out of line saying that, right? So do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it is when you put these things side by side, it's like, wait, we're going to pay the executive of the number 2 team more than we would pay any player on like the most prized franchise we own, the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's interesting. Some would say, hey, maybe that's the cost of doing business. But to follow that up, and if we're being honest, maybe it would have been easier to stomach if the Raptors were doing better over the last, 2-3 years, which, let's be honest, they just weren't. Right? Like, that's not breaking any news. The Raptors have struggled the last few years. I mean, lottery picks, they've just been struggling. So can you be that surprised if, sometimes the timing of things just comes to an end? And as much as we hate it, as much as we don't like it, as much as we knew that this might be part of the deal, it's still tough. It's still very tough. And I think that Masai Ujiri's time in Toronto, here's a quote here that I see from JD Bunkus, right? He does a show on The Fan, the JD Bunkus podcast. He says about Masai Ujiri, his legacy is massive. He not only delivered a championship, he helped change the way the Raptors are viewed in the league and how Raptors fans view themselves, right? You're hearing the same sentiment, right? The same sentiment that I was saying at the start of this pod. That clip is going to live forever. Believe in yourselves, believe in the city. Like, things that happened that, there was an all-star game in Toronto. I never thought that was going to happen. And I mean, the weather might not make that happen again, as that was one of the coldest days on record. And it obviously had to happen on All-Star weekend, right? But the point I'm making is, it's crazy that Masai Ujiri, the things that he was able to bring to this city in terms of NBA All-Star game, in terms of the NBA Finals, we're going to see more of this next year. And I know that, I don't know behind the scenes a role that he played, but I'm sure he had something to do with bringing the WNBA to Toronto. I don't know how much publicly they'd be able to say that. And again, I don't know that. That's me making assumptions, right? But I just think that if you ask most executives around the league, or if you ask most NBA people who the best execs are, you're going to get Sam Presti. You're going to get Masai Ujiri soon after. That's just real. Because I don't think people fully grasp the degree of difficulty. Like the Kawhi Leonard thing, right? The trade is happening. We know there were rumors Kawhi didn't want to come here. But you need to have that person at the top of your organization that's able to sit down in front of Kawhi, in front of Kawhi's team, in front of, shouts to Uncle Dennis. But you need someone who's going to be able to sit in front of that and be able to say, hey, no, this place, what do you need? Whatever it is, we got you. We'll focus in on the 1 year. We'll give you everything that you need. We are building a team to win a championship. That is our goal. And our goals are your goals. And that's what it was. And that's the same spiel given to Kyle Lowry that changed everything. The same spiel that was given to Kawhi Leonard that changed everything. I don't know. I understand people saying that it's a sad day, and I get it. And I think I'm trying to turn the sad into positivity and celebration. And that 1 year of Kawhi Leonard, I think as a Raptors fan, if you're a Raptors fan, that's the greatest season of your fandom, obviously. I'm saying of your sports fandom, if you're a Toronto person, right? Of a certain age. I mean, I highly doubt that there are other executives that would have had the audacity, right, to trade away Kawhi Leonard or to trade for Kawhi Leonard. And I'm going to keep bringing it up because I think it's so funny, the revisionist history that gets done now. I have the tweets. I have the polls at the time. I have the comments on my tweets at the time of me being like, hold on, why are people mad that we just got Kawhi Leonard? The split was 50-50. Don't let people fool you now, media people, Raptors fans. There were a lot of people that were not on board with that DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard deal. And they thought it was the 1 year. And I was like, yeah, but what if they make the finals? And even beyond that, like, yes, winning the championship was obviously incredible, but think about all of the great moments along the way. It's funny because there's so many different people, that get credit for what the Toronto Raptors are. And we just did this for the 30th anniversary. But it's like you think of, people talk about even, I mean, my mentions were going crazy when we were talking about the Kendrick and Drake stuff because I went to the Kendrick concert last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. And people were talking about, Drake put the Raptors on the map and all he did and it's like, Masai brought him in. Masai is the one that elevated that relationship and understood the importance of that relationship, and OVO being on, the practice facility and what that meant in terms of just culture and pride for the city. Like Masai did that, like there's so many things that the Raptors were at the forefront of in terms of just being different as an organization, but also just the style of players that they draft. We just saw it again, right? They're getting their 6'8", 6'9" guy that can handle a little, that can do a little bit of everything, that is a hustler, that plays defense, that has a little bit of dog mentality in him. Like all of that stems from Masai Ujiri. You see his personality in that. You see a guy where a lot of execs go up and they're talking, but they're, how do I put this politely? BSing, for lack of a better term, right? You saw the passion come out of Masai Ujiri on multiple occasions, whether it was a good press conference or a bad press conference. Like think about after he traded Pascal and he's out there with tears in his eyes talking about Pascal and how difficult it was to trade him away and how tough that was. Like these are things where we got to see an executive who was a real person, a real dude that did so much for so many people in this city. And I think the best thing to do is just salute that and appreciate that. It's really interesting when you think back about what's going on with the Toronto Raptors. And if we look forward to what's next for this Raptors team, I think as we head into next season, I think Masai left the team in a spot where he's able to Masai left the team in a spot where they're able to at least compete next year for the playoffs. And I think that's super important. And I know that would be super important to him. So I think, Bobby Webster's also there still, and their front office is still there. So all of the things in terms of structure and the players and the type of players they want. And obviously you have the same coach. Like you would assume that a lot of that is intact going forward, right? And regardless of them tanking in previous years, I think it's tough to argue that they are at least in a better direction now than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And like all the things that this organization had to deal with, like the bubble and playing in Tampa and having to practice in like a ballroom in a hotel, like all of the things that this dude had to deal with for this organization going forward, all the things that this guy meant to the organization off the court as well, right? Like Barack Obama was at Toronto Raptors games. What? Do you know what I mean? Like there's just a lot of things that, again, I never thought that we would see happen with this Toronto Raptors organization. And a lot of that stems from Masai Ujiri. And I really do think that it's important to celebrate that before we get into the negativity. And I know I'm speaking that into a space that is often negative and is often going to do the most to get the negative, to put the negativity out there, to get the clicks. And I get that and I understand that. But, you know, maybe I want to try to be the change that you want to see, right? I want to hear people speak positively about things. And I think Masai Ujiri deserves to be celebrated. And I know that the last few years weren't that good. And I'm going to be honest, you know, like there's moves that I didn't agree with, right? So like, I get it. I totally understand. And as much as it sucks, not everything lasts forever. It just doesn't. I'm definitely going to stop doing this soon because there's a press conference that I'm sure everybody wants to watch, and there'll probably be more to come out after that press conference, more information that will come out after that press conference. But I also think though it's important to maintain the level of admiration for Masai Ujiri and everything that he was able to accomplish both on and off the court in this country. Jeff says, barring any future championships, this is the end of the greatest era in Raps history. Totally agree. I mean, if I said that I didn't really ever believe that I would see the Raptors win one championship, I mean, seeing them win two, I don't know. It's tough. It's really tough. Because the reason I'm pausing and I'm stumbling around is because that 2019 championship season was special, right? Like everybody has stories about remember when, where were you when they won? You know, where were you for the parade? Like all of these things will be memories that are going to live forever that we're going to pass down. And if you think about it in the context of this city and the Leafs not winning since what, 67? And so you have people who haven't seen the Leafs win a championship for their entire lives. Right? Like we take it for granted, and I'm just trying to remind myself and the audience as well. Like seeing those parades, man, nothing compared to that. Those street views of Yonge and Dundas Square after the championship, that's a movie. That's incredible. That's going to live forever. You think of the parade and you see there's been no parade like that anywhere else since, right? Not in North American sports. That's incredible. Masai Ujiri did that. He did. And you could go through the history of all the Masai Ujiri moves, and you could talk about all the turning points and, you know, the Rudy Gay trade and, you know, not trading Kyle and how that all played out. And there's just so much that Masai Ujiri meant to this organization. But I think overall, many have echoed what I already said at the start of the start of this. That belief in yourself is maybe the biggest lesson that Masai Ujiri has left the city of Toronto with. Because this is someone that came here, that made this place his home, that made a lot of relationships in this city whether it's politically, I mean, financially, charitable efforts, did so much for basketball and just blowing up the game in this city, did so much in terms of a front office where it was important to him to be diverse in all ways, not just gender, but, you know, also, having people from around the world, not only on the court, but off the court as well. Like really embracing, like a lot of people talk about what Toronto is in terms of a diverse market when it's convenient for them, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? But Masai Ujiri is someone that actually did it, right? Like he made that a staple of what this organization is. Like he made that a staple of what it meant to be a part of that organization. And I think that will be his lasting legacy. Everyone's going to point to the championship, which of course is incredible. And, we're never going to forget that. Everyone in this city has memories from that championship run. But I think so much needs to be said about what he did off the court, what he did for so many people in terms of giving them someone to look for, to just be like, that guy did it. And I don't say that lightly in terms of the importance of seeing a black man in a role like that in this city, in this country. Like that means something, right? Like there's a generation of kids that that just seems normal. And I'm here to tell you that it's not normal. And he did with it the greatest thing that this city has seen sports wise in a very, 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 very long time. And I don't want to do the debate about what's bigger, the World Series of 92, 93 versus the Raptors championship. Like, I don't care about what's better. I'm just saying celebrate both. We're allowed to enjoy both. We like both teams. We cheer for both teams. It's not about one being better than the other. I think it's more about sports does something that very few things in this world can do. And it brings people together, right? It brings people together from different walks of life. And you think about what that 2019 summer was like. Everyone walking around in Raptors gear for the whole summer, every single day. And you would just see someone else and you give them a head nod, you give them a high five, you dap them up. Everyone just big smiles on their faces. Like, I think those are the memories, those little moments, right? Are the things that bond us together. Those are the beautiful things that sports can do. We get so tied up in the monotony of like, the sports talk culture and all that, when the reality is at the end of the day, the beauty of sports is how it brings people together. And that 2019 year, like, listen, I covered it. We did the pod every night for every Raptors game that season. Did we do every game? Did I miss a game that season? I don't remember. If we missed a game, might have been one or two, but I genuinely don't remember right now. Someone in the chat might help me out with that. I got to go back and look. But my point is, I was locked into that championship season. Every game mattered. And I made sure to soak in every single game, every single minute, because you never know when that's going to happen again. And you would think that living in the city of Toronto and also being a Leaf fan, because, hey, note to everyone, you're allowed to like both teams. I don't know why we do this thing where it's like we got to compare all the time and like this and not like that. And this is better than, like, we live in Toronto. I love the Leafs. I love the Raptors. Sue me. But my point is that it was so funny to me that the Raptors were having this 1 year shot where everything was put in the middle of the table. Can they win a championship? And in a city that loves the Leafs so much that, again, there's generations that haven't seen the Leafs win a championship. There are kids that barely even saw the Leafs win a playoff round. Jeez, getting depressed even thinking about it. But the fact that that was part of why I kept saying, appreciate this, enjoy this, because now that's all that we have to look back on. And nothing will ever take that away. Nothing will ever take away that championship season. Nothing will ever take away, you know, Masai said we wanted to win it. Like Masai on stage getting the trophy and saying we wanted to win a championship and we won a championship and he's screaming, yeah, like, oof, chills. I'm repeating myself, I know, but I'm stressing. Take this time to celebrate. Don't do the internet thing where you're just going to get mad about why and this is bad and all of that. There's going to be enough time for that. And also, if the Raptors go out and have a decent season and they're back in the playoff run, everyone will be like, oh, okay, cool. Everyone will be okay. And even if they don't, it doesn't matter because we sold the shirts. We still have the shirts somewhere. If you're reading this, we still champs. Can't take that away. And no matter what the drama is between ownership groups and what that means, you cannot take away the fact that the Raptors were 2019 NBA champions, and it's because of Masai Ujiri. So, again, I'll close it with this. We're at an hour 44 here. Wow. Almost 2 hours. But if there's someone that's worth it, it's Masai Ujiri, right? Hold on. Let me read some more comments here. Oh, Scramble says, appreciate the pod, Shell. Stay good with it. Appreciate that. Also says, I'm saying we get 3 players at every spot except center right now, and they still have the mid-level exception to add a piece. We are in good shape. I agree with that. I think the Raptors aren't in a bad spot, especially with where the Eastern Conference is right now. I think the Raptors, things could be a lot worse for the Raptors. I'm so interested to watch this press conference. That's really why I'm going to get off soon, because I really want to watch this press conference. Wow. I totally missed this. But Mark Stein said this 2 hours ago on Twitter. Mark Stein, long time NBA reporter. He does mostly on his Substack right now, but used to work for the New York Times and ESPN, all over the place, right? Washington Post, like a legit reporter. So Mark Stein says Ujiri emerged as a candidate in Atlanta's recent search for a president of basketball operations, as he reported in May. A sign perhaps his time with the Raptors was nearing an end, and then now it's over. It's interesting because I do remember that, and I remember brushing it off in terms of like, what? Masai's not leaving to go to Atlanta. I really hope Masai doesn't become the president of basketball operations for the Atlanta Hawks. I really hope that's not a thing. I don't know where I want Masai to go. I want him to be the president of the Raptors. Masai is obviously going to get another job. Masai can have literally whatever job he wants, right? Which, like, remember there was talk after the championship that maybe that next job might not even be in basketball? I don't know. Tough day for Raptors fans. Tough day, which I think people are allowed to be, to have their feelings about being upset that Masai Ujiri's gone, because for a lot of Raptors fans, like I said this, right? Like, think about it. We're in 2025 right now, right? The stat I read earlier was from what, 2014, 2015, I think that's what it was, the Sportsnet stats. So if you're 10 years old, you only really know the Raptors of being really good up until the last couple of years. Right? Like, there's kids that only know the Raptors of being good. Like that 30th anniversary, going through all that, it's like, oh, wait, the Raptors were really that bad for that long? Wait, the Raptors could have had Damon and Vince and Tracy? What? Oh, man. Yeah, 2013, 2014. Since 2013, 2014, the Raptors had the 5th best record in the NBA. 2013, 2014. So if you were born in 2013, the Raptors have been the 5th best team in the NBA for your lifetime. That's crazy. I got to stop. Really appreciate people for tuning in right now to this podcast, Canada Hoops Daily Podcast. Hopefully I gave you, some time to vent, some time to reminisce, some time to think of the good times and appreciate Masai Ujiri, because that's the role I want to provide. If you want to hear someone talk about all the negativity and point to the blame game of whose fault is this and why are we doing this and what's next, there will be a million places for you to go listen to that stuff. Cool. I don't want to focus on that because I want to make sure that we give enough time to celebrate what Masai Ujiri did for the Toronto Raptors. And he was the face of the Toronto Raptors. We just went through the 30th year anniversary and celebrated all the iconic figures that came through, but none of them meant as much to this organization as Masai Ujiri did. And somehow, some way, the Toronto Raptors need to figure out a way to honor Masai Ujiri. I don't know if that's a banner. I don't know if that's a level of excellence. I don't know if that's a statue of him holding the trophy. I don't know what it is. But I think I speak for many Raptors fans that if you are with MLSE, one of the things that you need to do is to figure out a way to honor Masai Ujiri. Because Raptors fans, remember, the fans view Masai Ujiri as the Raptors. The NBA views Masai Ujiri as the Raptors. I know it's easy to get caught up in the business of how much money someone makes and, hey, make the decision, hey, your contract's up. We don't want to pay you that much money anymore. Obviously, cool. You know what? It's time for us both to go our separate ways. Hey, that's big business. That happens. I understand that. I get it. But as fans, and one of the things Keith Pelly talked about at the press conference for the Leafs was talking about repairing, or not even repairing, because that insinuates that, there's trouble within the fan base. There isn't. But what he talked about was improving the relationship between the organization, its players, and the fan base. I think this is a great opportunity with the Toronto Raptors to do the same thing. Because undoubtedly, if you were to ask any Raptor fan now, right, like now that he's gone, who's the GOAT Raptor? It's Masai Ujiri. It really is. We just didn't think of it in that context because he was still here. But now that he's gone, it's sad that it's another one of those scenarios where you don't know what you got till it's gone. Not just a catchy tune, kids. But it's real. Masai Ujiri is this organization. Forget about having the 5th best record in the NBA. Like, he brought a championship to Toronto when everyone else was talking about nobody wants it. Like, the comment that he had, right? The believe in yourself. That came off a question about, again, and I understand why people asking the question. I'm not knocking the reporter for asking the question because I get the question. We all sat here and watched star player after star player leave Toronto, go somewhere else, and then we're still dealing with it now where you hear about all these other NBA players talking about, customs and cable TV and all these other like dumb excuses for why it's not good to play in Toronto and this, that, and the third. Meanwhile, when the players actually come here and experience it, they love it. All that talk about watching the draft and seeing my guy CMB get mad about, or, it looked like he swore when he got drafted. And it's like, we don't have to jump to the negative right away. Do you know why? Because we know time and time again, people can say whatever they want, but then you come to Toronto, and especially now after the draft, you come to Toronto in the summer. Ain't nobody got a bad word to say about Toronto in the summer. Especially no NBA player has something bad to say about Toronto in the summer. Right? So all of these things, we got to think about the culture that Masai Ujiri has created. The reason why the Raptors were able to be successful was because of the foundation laid by Masai Ujiri. There were things that were demanded. You were going to play hard. You were going to play defense. He was going to try to win a championship. He believed that, right? He, after those years of LeBronto, as upset and frustrated as the fan base was after LeBronto, the level of disrespect that the fan base felt of seeing all the memes of LeBronto, LeBron like shimmying on the court, standing on the table, beating his chest, pretending to drink a beer, all that stuff, the disrespect that was LeBronto, the hurt that the fans felt, you saw that Masai felt that too. And what did he do? He went out there and got Kawhi Leonard. And I can't stress that enough because there's not many other GMs that would have made that move, that would have said, I'm trading the face of the franchise right now. I'm getting rid of the coach of the year right now because we need to figure something out because these results are not good enough. Our goal is to win a championship. Do you know how many people, we watch it in sports all the time. Do you know how many people would have been okay with just like, hey, we're the Raptors. We make the playoffs every year. And cool. We make the playoffs. The team makes money. We win a couple rounds. We lose to Cleveland. We lose to LeBron every year. But hey, we're making money. We're printing money. Everything's good. Our regular season records are good. So the stands are packed all the time. Do you know how many organizations would just be okay with that? And yet you had this president that had the audacity to come out in front of everyone and say, we're going to win a championship. And then he did it. We can't forget that. We got to spend the day celebrating that. That to me is the most important thing that needs to be done today, because the negativity, like I keep bringing up the negativity because it really hurts my feelings. I get so mad scrolling every day and just seeing people being mad about stuff. We don't take enough time to celebrate. And we definitely need to celebrate this era of Raptors basketball because it was one of the best sporting eras this country has ever seen. And we could take this a step further, right? All of those kids now, I mean, RJ's on the Raptors and talks about being up in the stands and watching DeMar. Shea is the best player in the NBA. You know, he was at the ACC as a kid watching DeMar as well. Like, all of these things are all directly linked. And that energy, that positivity, that belief starts from that man at the top of the organization. All of those things are linked. I believe in positivity. I believe in vibes. I'm telling you, all those kids that you just watched in the NBA finals, right? They grew up watching the Raptors. They grew up believing and watching DeMar and Kyle and that whole We the North era, and everyone had their We the North gear. Those dudes were kids then. Those dudes are in the league now putting in work. They grew up watching the Raptors. You go and you see CMB wearing a Raptors t-shirt. He posted it. Like, these are things that the Raptors were put at the forefront of the NBA, in the forefront of the sporting world, in the forefront of culture in this city, in this cult. Like, across the country, they had watch parties for the Toronto Raptors playoff runs in every major city across this country. I was getting messages from people watching the pod from Saskatoon, from Saskatchewan, talking about the watch parties they were having there for the Toronto Raptors championship run. That's Masai Ujiri. That's a legacy that will live far beyond this day. And you can choose to be negative and talk about whose fault this contract is and that contract is. And cool, I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to spend the day watching Kawhi Leonard highlights. I'm going to spend the day watching 2019 videos. You know what I love watching? That run that Kawhi had during the game 6 against the Bucks where the Raptors are down and Kawhi goes on his own personal run to bring the Raptors back in the game. And then he punctuates it by dunking on Giannis, and the crowd is going crazy, and they're lifting the trophy in the Air Canada Center. They're lifting the trophy of winning the Eastern Conference Championship. The confetti is flowing and the Raptors are going to the NBA Finals. And it wasn't just that they were going to the NBA Finals, but we all knew that they had a chance to win. You could be one of those idiots that talks about asterisks. And it always amazes me that the same people talking about asterisks cover the NBA and every year talk about the injuries that occur during the NBA. But you seem to use your asterisks sparingly. Like no one's putting I shouldn't say no one. Idiots are putting an asterisk beside OKC's championship this year, right? But nobody puts an asterisk beside Boston's last year when we talk about how many people were injured during their run to the finals last year. Nobody talks about that, and nobody should, because people get injured every season, right? We don't take away one of Steph's rings because he beat a LeBron team of LeBron, Dellavedova, Timofey Mozgov, Tristan Thompson, and Shumpert. Nobody takes away their first championship that the Golden State Warriors won because there's no Kyrie Irving or Kevin Love. Injuries happen all the time. So I'm never going to put an asterisk on the Raptors championship. That's insane. Golden State had like 5 All-Stars. Whose fault is that? That if you don't have depth because you're top heavy. Maybe you should build your team better. Because Kawhi was hobbled. And you know what? The Raptors had enough of a supporting cast that a hobbled Kawhi was still able to put in work. And you know what? His man's Kyle Lowry showed up for him to start game 6. And his man's Freddie Van Fleet was there to close it out and give you that legendary scream that's going to live forever. All of that happened because of the team built by Masai Ujiri. When Masai traded and brought Kawhi Leonard in, his starting point guard, Kyle Lowry, was not happy. There are a lot of different ways that could have went. If you don't have good leadership at the top, there's a lot of different ways that could have went. Heck, we saw in the doc, which again, if you didn't watch the Raptors Delight doc, shame on you. Go to YouTube, put that on your watch list, your next list. Make sure you tune into that because it's a great doc, 4 parts. But we learned in that doc about how the Raptors they went to Kyle Lowry and they're like, hey, if you don't want to do this, we can sort something out. Remember, they got Marc Gasol. There were rumors at the time, could have added Mike Conley to that as well. So if you don't want to roll with this and what we're doing here, let us know. But if you're in, you're in. And guess what? Kyle was in. And so were the chips in the dip. That's all Masai Ujiri. Those are the things that, you talk about the NBA, you talk about who these players are, where they come from, and having someone at the helm who is able to relate to them, to speak to their uncle, speak to their family, like that stuff matters. Also a dude at the helm who's able to no nonsense tell you, listen, we'll put you in the position to succeed. It's all right here. It's on you. Again, believe in yourself. That's Masai Ujiri. Listen, man, I could go on all day, but I said I was going to stop, and that was probably 30 minutes ago. Is this Instagram feed even still up? Probably not, right? No, the Instagram appears to still be going. Wow. Kind of surprised. Anyways, we've been going for like 2 hours. So if you happen to be tuning into this feed right now, wherever you're watching, first off, thank you. Secondly, if you're watching, just hit the like button, show some love. That's all we ask for, But if you want to watch the full episode of this pod, you'll be able to find it on Apple and Spotify. It'll be up shortly after this stream goes down. I'll put up the full thing. You will also able to find it on YouTube. So go to YouTube, type in Sheldon Alexander or Canada Hoops Daily. You'll be able to find a playlist that has all the Canada Hoops Daily content, including this live stream of instant reaction to Masai Ujiri parting ways with the Toronto Raptors. And you can find that whole conversation comments. Send in all your comments. People are going to watch this press conference, and you know what? They're probably going to want to talk some more after said press conference. I just couldn't wait. I just didn't want to wait. So here we are. Thank you. I really appreciate people tuning in. And I was sitting here, I saw the news drop, and I knew that I needed the therapy of letting it all out. I also knew that I wanted to talk about the positive, talk about the celebration, talk about all the good things. I'll let all the other people talk about the contracts and why this is not done and why this is bad for the team and whose fault it is. And I'll let other people sort that out. I want to make sure that we gave a platform to celebrate and reminisce about the good times and all the good that Masai Ujiri did. Here's a comment. Someone just simply says, preach. Another comment says, tell him that we sent you, Masai with love from the north. I see what you did there, and I like that. What else do we got here? I think we are going into the tax come trade deadline, and it's not on Masai this time. It will be because the next legacy to go all out off the bat. I mean, that's an interesting point. Bobby Webster is now in a position where, listen, if there's a new president that's coming in, you want to be able to show progress. You want to be able to show success. You want to be able to show, hey, we're heading in the right direction. So does that mean that there's extra pressure on him to do something in the upcoming free agency? I would think so. I don't think the Raptors are done building this team right now. I also just think that if you look at the pieces of their team, it doesn't really fit. Like there's some things that, you got a lot of players in the same positions, right? Like, are the Raptors going to start quickly Brandon Ingram, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl? Like your perimeter is Ingram, Scotty, and RJ. I mean, you can do that, but that would mean one of those guys needs to be like a defensive guy. Like who's taking the matchup to lock down the other team's best perimeter guy? We know Scotty can do it, but you also think Scotty is still the driver of your offense. Like even if he's not getting the buckets, but you want him to still, do a lot of the ball handling. Quickly probably is a guy that's spacing the floor more so than being the point guard. I don't know. How does Brandon Ingram fit into all this? I don't know. Right. But then you look Grady, Ochai, CMB, Mogbo. Like you got a lot of guys who play that sort of perimeter, who are playing your 3-4, right? If you think about it, CMB, Mogbo, like both CMB and Mogbo are both undersized centers. So I know you're trying to have one of them back up Jakob Poeltl. That's going to be tough, right? So they've already talked about there's different ways that they can bring in another center. So we'll see how that plays out. Grady, I would assume, like personally, if they keep this team, I would say you probably want Art. Like you could talk me into RJ coming off the bench to lead your second unit, and you just run the offense through him for your second unit, and you start like Ochai, because Ochai, you tell him, hey, you're the defensive guy, you're 3-and-D, you're the hustle guy with the starters. Because if we're being honest, Scotty needs the ball in his hands, RJ needs the ball in his hands, Ingram needs the ball in his hands, Quickly's your point guard. That's what I'm saying. I think there's room here for moves to be made for Bobby Webster, and I'm very interested to see where they go. But again, tons of time to sort that out. This is about Masai Ujiri. This is about saluting Masai the God. I want everybody to go Google I Believe in Masai. Big shouts to Tim and Sid, the goats of this thing. That I Believe in Masai video, iconic, because Masai's iconic. And it summed up an entire generation of Raptors fans and the feeling that they had in terms of believing in Masai Ujiri. And the irony of it all is that at the end of the day, Masai's lasting legacy is telling us to believe in ourselves. I don't know if there's a better way that I could end this pod than that right there. So I'm going to say thank y'all for tuning in to this, the Canada Hoops Daily Podcast. Masai Ujiri out as president of the Toronto Raptors. Really appreciate y'all for tuning in. We went for over 2 hours. So if you tuned in the middle of the live stream, don't hesitate to go to YouTube to catch the full video, or you can catch the full podcast on Apple or Spotify shortly after this live broadcast ends. Really appreciate y'all for tuning in and rocking with me as always. I wouldn't still be doing this if there wasn't still people in the mentions asking for it and tuning in and filling up the chat. And we've been doing this in a bunch of different iterations and a bunch of different places. And no matter what, you guys have followed us wherever we move the podcast to. And I appreciate that. I sincerely appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. And that's the main reason why I wanted to come on here and just show love to Masai, the God Ujiri, because he showed love to us. And we'll never, ever forget that. So again, as always, I used to pray for times like this, to rhyme like this. This is the Canada Hoops Daily Podcast. As always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.